The rain-soaked apocalypse. The four of us in the dorm were swallowed by the flood, but the next second, I jolted upright. We four had actually reverted to 1 week before the torrential rain struck, yet the gloom of the end times instantly settled over us. I shouted loudly, "We've got a second chance, so we won't wait to die like before." My words served as a sharp wake-up call. They plucked up their courage at once. In this new life, we'll get fully prepared to survive the doomsday. The first step is to stock up on plenty of supplies.
Self-heating rice, water, bottled water, the more the better, and water purification tablets. If it lasts a long time, we can improvise. Medicine, cold medicine, fever reducers, anti-inflammatories, antibiotics, bandages, iodine, gauze, and vitamins. Warmth, thick blankets, down jackets, hand warmers, heat patches. The temperature will drop below freezing. Without heating in the dorm, we'll freeze to death. Tools, a hand crank emergency radio, several high-capacity power banks, flashlights, batteries, dry bags, duct tape, rope. I remember later, survivors tried to raid our supplies. His eyes darken. The list keeps growing, covering several pages in dense writing. Looking at this heavy list, a real problem stares us in the face. But, money. Zhang Ting says softly, buying all this costs a lot of money. We're still students. The four of us fall silent. Our families are all average. Our monthly allowance is limited. Money is the issue. We have to figure something out. I put down my pen. I looked at my three roommates. The hope that had just lit up their faces was drenched by the cold water of reality, flickering uncertainly. Alright, let's each write down how much allowance we have left. Put it all together, or see if we can ask our families for more. What excuse? I have over 800 left in my account. It's only halfway through the month. How do I ask my parents? Say the apocalypse is coming? Send money fast to buy supplies? My parents would definitely think I'm crazy, or that I've joined a pyramid scheme. I'm about the same, and even if we asked, our families couldn't come up with much at once. I might be able to get a bit more. Just say I need to sign up for a very important training course. We can't rely entirely on our families, and time might be running out. We need a faster way to get money. What method? Borrowing, not loan sharks. Credit loans from legitimate platforms. Installment loans. We're all college students. We have student status. Clean credit history. We should be able to get some credit limits. Borrow a little from each platform. Together, it'll be a decent sum. But, so much debt. How will we pay it back later? If we don't survive, there's no later. Survive. Then we can talk about paying off debt. Besides, the extreme weather has lasted so long. Whether society will restore order, and to what extent, are unknowns. Right now, survival is the top priority. Let's do it. I'll check how much I can apply for. That's right, survival is most important. Okay, Yang, you're the best with computers. Immediately look into which platforms disperse quickly, and have relatively high limits. We'll work separately. Avoid using the same platform. Zhang Ting, you're detail-oriented. Calculate the minimum amount we need to buy the basic supplies on the list. Make a budget. Li Shui, check the nearest big supermarket, pharmacy, hardware store, their inventory, and prices. Make a comparison. We might need to buy in batches at different locations. I'll finalize the list and sort by priority. Also think about how to fortify the dorm. I checked 5 platforms. I estimate each of us can get a loan of about $30,000 to $50,000. Altogether, maybe around $100,000 to $150,000. Some approvals are fast. The fastest ones can hit the account in a few hours. Basic survival supplies including food for a month, water, medicine, warm items. Rough estimate, at least $30,000. And that's just the basics. If we want to be safer, like reinforcing doors and windows, preparing more fuel for emergencies, the budget needs to go up to $50,000 or more. A big warehouse supermarket has the most stuff, but it's a bit far. The supermarket near school is small, expensive, and not much stock. Same with the pharmacy. Hardware store we'd need to go to a farther building materials market. The money is pretty much enough for the initial stage. We'll split it into 2 steps. Step 1, immediately order online for things that can be delivered. For example, power banks, batteries, water purification tablets, compressed biscuits, some common medicines. Pay with the money we have now. Request fastest delivery. Step 2, wait for the loan to come in, then immediately go to the farther big supermarket and building materials market for a big shopping spree. Rent a car to go. Rent a car. Right, too much stuff, we can't carry it back, and it's too conspicuous, easily attracts attention. Song Xingxing lowers her voice. Before the disaster fully erupts, we need to keep a low profile. Can't let anyone know we're hoarding a lot of supplies. The other 3 nod in deep agreement. In the past life, later, for a pack of expired cookies, the scenes of fighting and scrambling are still vivid. What about the dorm fortification? Wang Yang asks. Song Xingxing walks to the window, feels the window frame. First, waterproofing and reinforcement. The flood will eventually reach the 3rd floor. We're on the 1st floor, so we'll be the first hit. Doors and windows must be reinforced and sealed. We need plywood, plastic sheeting, silicone sealant, weather stripping, and tools. Second, warm. The temperature will drop sharply. We need to seal all the gaps to keep the heat in as much as possible. Later, people might try to break in and loot. The door needs extra reinforcement. Over the next few hours, the four of them barely stopped. Phone screens kept lighting up. Loan applications were submitted one after another. Several online orders were also placed. Choosing cash on delivery used up almost all the cash they had on hand. Just before dawn, the first loan came through. Like a much-needed boost. "It's here, mine's here," Wang Yang exclaimed softly, her voice mixed with excitement and a hint of unease. Soon, the others' phones also received credit alerts, one after another. The brief joy from the numbers was quickly replaced by heavy pressure. This money is our leverage for future survival, or it could be the boulder that crushes our families. Let's move. I don't have time to dwell. Standing up, Li Shui, you stay in the dorm to receive the deliveries. The three of us will rent a car, then go shopping. Take the list and budget. We split up. That's the most efficient. Wang Yang, Zhang Ting, and I changed clothes quickly, grabbed our bags and the list, and rushed out of the dorm. It was still raining, not too hard, but the cold raindrops hit their faces, making them shiver, as if feeling the chill of that apocalyptic downpour again. The car rental went smoothly. Using Wang Yang's driver's license, they rented the largest SUV, then headed straight to the biggest warehouse store. Once inside, the three split up according to the list. Wang Yang took the food section, canned goods, compressed biscuits, instant noodles, self-heating meals, chocolate, milk powder, a big bag of rice and flour. She swept through the aisles like a whirlwind, not even looking at the prices, just piling things into the cart. Zhang Ting was in charge of the household and medical sections. Thick quilts, blankets, thermal underwear, down jackets, and hand warmers. A big case of bottled water, water buckets, lighters, candles, flashlights, batteries, then cold medicine, fever reducers, painkillers, bandages, gauze, iodine, alcohol, vitamins. Her cart was also piled up like a small mountain in no time. I headed straight for the tools and hardware section. Large rolls of waterproof plastic sheeting, thick wooden planks, silicone sealant, weather-stripping tape, hammers, nails, screwdrivers, saws, high-powered flashlights, multi-tools, rope, waterproof bags, and a small charcoal heater, and several large packs of smokeless charcoal. We even found 2 portable water purifiers. At checkout, the cashier looked at the mountain of supplies and the 3 grim-faced girls, his eyes full of surprise. The amount was huge. When swiping the credit card, my heart was bleeding, but my hands didn't hesitate at all. They made 3 trips back and forth just to stuff everything into the car. The SUV was weighed down so much the chassis lowered. On the way back, the rain seemed to have gotten heavier. The 3 of them were silent. Outside the window, the city was still calm, but they all knew this calm was like a bubble that would burst at the slightest touch. When they drove to the dormitory building, they ran into a small problem. The dormitory aunt saw them carrying bags and packages down, especially the wooden planks and tools. She walked over with a puzzled look. "What are you guys doing? Buying all this stuff, and all this wood? What are you guys carrying all this for? What's this?" My heart tightened, but I forced a smile on my face. "Ma'am, our department has a play next week. These are all props and set materials. We're just storing them in the dorm for now." Wang Yang quickly chimed in. Right, ma'am, we need to rehearse. There's a lot of stuff, sorry about that." The dorm matron was skeptical, but seeing we were familiar students, she didn't ask further. She just muttered, "Don't make too much of a mess in the dorm." The 3 of us breathed a sigh of relief. We hurried up. While no one was watching, we took the most important supplies and quickly moved them into the dorm. Li Shui also came down to help. Seeing the mountain of supplies, her pale face finally had some color. After a few trips back and forth, we finally moved most of the stuff in. The dorm was almost half full. Only a narrow walkway was left. The 4 of us collapsed on the floor, exhausted. The small mountain of supplies we got in exchange left us with mixed feelings. "This is just the first batch," I said, catching my breath. "We need more water, and not enough medicine." I looked out at the heavy rain. "We have to start the renovations right away." After resting for less than 10 minutes, Wang Yang and I went out again, this time to the hardware store, to buy more reinforcement materials, especially stronger metal corner brackets and thicker wooden planks. Zhang Ting and Li Shui stayed in the dorm, start organizing supplies, sorting and storing, and try to use what they have to do some simple sealing. On the way to the building materials market, Wang Yang and I both noticed there seem to be fewer pedestrians than usual, and most are in a hurry. The weather forecast has been continuously reporting about this unusual rainfall warning residents to stay safe. A sense of foreboding, like a storm approaching, begins to spread across the city. The purchasing process is also quick and efficient. Back at the dorm, the 4 girls don't hesitate at all. Immediately start the dorm renovation project. I measure and cut the boards. Wang Yang volunteers. She's the handiest. I assist and secure things. Zhang Ting hands tools, holds the boards. I work on the window sealing. I stand on the table, carefully use caulk and weather stripping to seal every gap in the window, then apply waterproof plastic sheeting. Finally, nail on a layer of cut boards to secure it, leaving only a small opening for observation and ventilation. Li Shui is in charge of cleaning up the trash and stacking the organized supplies in the most reasonable positions, clearing workspace. The sound of hammering, the sound of sawing echo in the dorm, the 4 exhausted girls, driven by the will. to survive, mechanically repeat their actions. Sweat soaks their clothes, blisters form on their hands, but no one calls a halt. Every one of us knows. Every extra board hammered in, every extra gap sealed is one more chance to survive. When it gets dark again, the dorm has completely changed. Windows and doors are reinforced and sealed, especially the door. Not only are crossbars nailed on the inside for reinforcement, but also metal brackets are used for extra strength. The small dorm seems like a crude fortress. Though rough, it gives an unprecedented sense of security. After the last board is nailed in, the four are almost exhausted. They sit directly on the cold floor, leaning against the supply boxes, too tired to even speak. Outside, the rain becomes dense and loud, pattering on the boards and plastic, making a dull sound. The apocalypse is here. We've taken the first step. I could really use a bath and then sleep like a log. Are we really going to make it? I don't know, but at least this time we're not like last time, just waiting to die in despair. We're together. This time we're in it together, for better or worse. We're no longer naive college girls waiting for fate's judgment. We've been through death, and we're determined to fight for our lives from the Grim Reaper. Dorm 103, open the door. Hurry. Shove the tools and anything visible under the bed. Cover some boxes with the quilt. Yang, go open the door. Try to block the doorway. Auntie, good morning. What's up? What's going on with your dorm? Last night, you were banging and clanging until late. Other dorms complained. And why do you have so much stuff piled up in your room? Don't you know it's a fire hazard? Sorry, Auntie, we're preparing for a big cosplay event. These are all costumes and props. We were up late making props. We disturbed everyone. We're really sorry. We'll be careful today. Event? I haven't heard of any event. What event needs so much stuff? Also, I think I saw you guys carrying wooden planks. Yes, it's an apocalyptic theme. We need a lot of set pieces. It looks like stockpiling supplies. The planks are for the backdrop. Oh, there's a leak. Water's leaking on the 3rd floor. The dorm auntie's attention was immediately drawn away. She muttered, "Can't have a single peaceful day." And she didn't have time to look into our dorm's oddities. She hurried upstairs. We quickly closed the door, locked it, and leaned our backs against it, letting out a long sigh of relief. That scared me to death. This won't work. We're too conspicuous. A lot of people must have seen us moving stuff yesterday. The dorm auntie got suspicious. We need to find a way to cover it up. However, before we could come up with a better plan, an even bigger accident happened. In the afternoon, the rain didn't let up at all. It got even heavier. We were taking inventory of our supplies, calculating how long they would last. Suddenly, we heard a dull thud from outside the window. Then, the sound of rushing water and piercing screams. What's going on? We rushed to the window, which was almost completely boarded up, and struggled to look outside. We saw that on the side of the dorm building, an old drain pipe, unable to bear the load, had burst under the relentless rain. Murky water was gushing out. The low-lying area downstairs quickly started to flood. Even worse, the burst pipe was right above our dorm and the neighboring dorm 104. Water was streaming down the outer wall. Oh no, will the water seep in? Our dorm is on the 1st floor. Although we did some waterproofing, it was mainly aimed at potential rising floodwater later on. We weren't fully prepared for an accident like this, with water directly seeping in from the outer wall. Soon, the terrible thing happened. Li Shui's bed and desk by that wall. The walls started to get damp at a visible rate. A wet patch appeared. Water droplets rolled down the wall. Drip, 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 falling onto the cardboard boxes stacked below. Quick, move the stuff away. We scrambled to move the boxes. The boxes contained some important supplies that Li Shui was in charge of organizing, mainly high-energy chocolate and beef jerky, and some hygiene products and spare batteries. The water stains spread quickly. Even though we reacted quickly, 2 boxes still got their bottoms soaked. We hurriedly dragged the boxes to a dry spot in the middle of the dorm, opened them to check. When we opened them, our hearts sank. The chocolate in one of the boxes, although most were individually wrapped, several large bags were deformed by the seeping dirty water. The dirty water even seeped inside. They looked inedible. The sanitary pads and tissues in the other box were more than half wet. Some spare batteries were also soaked. Though we don't know if they're ruined, their reliability is greatly reduced. Damn it, it's all my fault. I didn't put them properly. If only I had stacked them higher. It's not your fault. No one expected the pipe to burst. These are life-saving supplies they got with huge debt. Every chocolate bar, every battery, is incredibly precious. The loss, though not devastating, is like a bucket of cold water dousing the little sense of security we had just built. I'm afraid it's not just that. Wang Yang examined the damp wall, his face grayed. Oh my god, how can the wall leak? Will all our stuff get wet? The supplies we stored by the wall, could they already be wet? What if the food and medicine get damp? This wall is wet. The dorm's insulation will be greatly reduced. When the extreme cold comes, this place will become an icebox, and the dampness will greatly increase our risk of getting sick. When it rains, it pours. The unexpected loss and damage made the situation immediately grim. I looked at the water stain and the contaminated supplies, forcing myself to stay calm. Panicking won't solve anything. Update the inventory. I picked up a pen, my voice steady beyond belief. First, contaminated food can't be risked. Discard all of it. After testing the batteries, discard the unusable ones. Wet hygiene products might be usable after drying, but their effectiveness will definitely be reduced. List them as secondary reserves. Second, the wall's waterproofing leak must be repaired immediately. Third, we need to reassign storage locations absolutely away from exterior walls and potential leak spots. But what about the money? Do we have enough money to cover these losses? Most of the loan money is already spent. The rest is needed for the planned purchase of the second batch of more important supplies, like more medicine and fuel. Adjust priorities: insulation, waterproofing, and medicine first. For food, the losses of hardtack and canned goods are minimal. As for the energy deficit, we can make it up with more rice and flour, though taste and convenience will be much worse. As for hygiene products, in extreme situations, we'll just have to manage. The weight of reality presses heavily on everyone's heart. Rebirth is not a panacea. Accidents always come uninvited. We sprang into action. I used the last of my cash to order quick-dry cement and waterproof coating via Same City Express online. Let Wang Yangyang figure out how to seal the damp walls from the inside as much as possible. Li Shui and Zhang Ting, with heavy hearts, cleaned up the contaminated supplies. When the chocolate was thrown away, Li Shui's tears never stopped. By evening, the walls were temporarily dealt with, but the dormitory was filled with a damp, moldy smell and a depressing atmosphere. The unexpected loss of supplies stung everyone's heart like a thorn. Can we really make it? We have to. My voice carried a hint of exhaustion, but still resolute. This loss won't break us. Instead, it reminds us that accidents can happen at any time. We can't rely solely on these supplies. We need to find ways to improve our own abilities. Abilities, like reading the weather, basic medical care, even self-defense. My eyes swept over them. We can't be like last time, just waiting to die when we get sick, and having no means to fight back when in danger. Starting tomorrow, in between organizing supplies and reinforcing the dorm, we'll take turns looking up information online, learning everything we might need in the apocalypse. We'll also do physical training, at least. When the time comes to run or fight, we won't be the first to fall. This proposal was agreed upon. The will to survive once again overcame the despair. In the following days, it felt like we were undergoing an insane boot camp. During the day, we continued to improve the dorm's defenses. Using the thickest materials, we added more reinforcement points to the door. We rearranged the beds to free up more space, and we elevated all supplies away from the floor and walls. We even used empty water bottles and buckets to store as much tap water as possible, in case the water supply is cut off. Meanwhile, we took turns learning. Wang Yang was in charge of studying the use and basic repair of radio receivers, trying to capture outside information after communication is lost. Zhang Ting studied basic medical care and wound treatment. She memorized the effects and applicable conditions of the limited medicines by heart. Li Shui is in charge of recording the weather changes, trying to find some patterns, and learning how to survive with minimal fuel and water just to stay alive. I focus on researching survival skills for extreme cold and floods, and some simple self-defense. We also insist on doing simple exercises every day. In our cramped dorm, squats, push-ups, sit-ups, and Pamela workouts. When we collapse on the floor, we encourage each other. The rain outside hasn't stopped, sometimes heavy, sometimes light. The news reports are getting more serious. Words like once in a century and extreme climate start showing up. Some low-lying areas of the city are already experiencing flooding. On the school forum, it's full of complaints and uneasy speculations about the weather, but most people still think it's just a prolonged heavy rain. Only we know this is just the beginning. On the afternoon of the 7th day, the temperature suddenly dropped without warning, as if going from late autumn to deep winter overnight. Howling wind mixed with freezing rain pounded against the wooden planks on the windows, making a terrifying sound. In the dorm, we put on thick down jackets, huddled together. The small heater is lit. The limited charcoal makes us use it sparingly. We can only take turns getting warm. It's here, just like last time. Li Shui's teeth are chattering, not sure if from cold or fear. Hang in there. I hug the hot water bottle tightly. It's filled with freshly boiled water. Can keep warm for a little while. At least this time we have down jackets, a heater, and dry blankets. Compared to last time when we froze unexpectedly, shivering with thin bedding, we're much better prepared, but the cold still exceeded expectations. The walls have been treated, but the dampness and low temperature still make the dorm cool down fast. Our breath turns into white mist. We had to increase the heater usage time. The charcoal burns much faster than expected. At this rate, the charcoal won't last a few days. Wang Yang looks worriedly at the few remaining bags of smokeless charcoal. What about food? I asked. We have plenty of compressed biscuits and canned food. Rice and flour are enough too, but they need to be cooked. The problem is we don't have much fuel left. They originally planned to buy more solid alcohol and gas canisters for indoor cooking, but the funds and unexpected expenses sidelined that plan. We only have a few small boxes of solid alcohol and one small gas canister left. Try to eat things that don't need heating. Eat some compressed biscuits and canned food. Only one hot meal a day. Using the least fuel, the quality of life drops sharply. Cold food gives little warmth. It's getting colder and colder in the dorm. Even with a thick blanket at night, we often wake up frozen. On the 10th day, the storm still rages. Floodwater starts to overflow. The water on campus is getting deeper. It's already above our calves. Although our dorm building is on higher ground, the first floor is starting to leak. We keep cleaning up with buckets and mops, the small amount of water seeping in under the door. It's exhausting. The power goes out. It's as if the world's throat is cut off. The lights go out instantly. Cell phone signal becomes extremely weak, on and off. The darkness and silence bring a fear bigger than we imagined. We huddle together, warming ourselves with flashlight beams. Signal is almost gone. Radio. Let's listen to the radio. The radio crackles with news from outside. The city is flooded in large areas. Traffic is paralyzed. Some areas have no power or water. The government is organizing rescue operations, but the severe weather makes rescue extremely difficult. Hope seems to be dwindling, like the battery. The darkness and dead silence from the blackout are like a cold hand gripping the throats of everyone in our dorm. Only the flashlight beam cuts through the dark, reflecting 4 pale, terrified faces. The roar of the storm and flood outside, without the background hum of electricity, becomes incredibly clear and frightening, like a giant beast gnawing at this shaky building. We help each other. Did we get help last time? The memory of death, like icy water, floods back into my mind. A sense of despair begins to spread. Time crawls slowly in the dark and cold. I don't know how long passed. Just as it was my turn to keep watch, and Wang Yang had just fallen asleep, a strange sound made my nerves tighten instantly. It wasn't the wind or rain, nor the groaning of the building under stress, but a scraping and prying sound from the door. Shh! I immediately whispered a warning, and woke the other 3. They woke up instantly. In the dark, 4 pairs of eyes stared at the dorm door in terror. Click, click. The sound is clearer now. Someone is trying to pick the lock. Who? Who's out there? The movement outside pauses for a moment, then a hoarse male voice speaks up. Hey, open up. We're from the next building. Our dorm is flooded. Just need a place to take shelter. His voice sounds normal enough, but the barely concealed urgency and the attempted break-in make us unable to trust him at all. We don't have room either, and we're all girls. It's not appropriate. Go to the guys' dorm. Cut the crap. We saw you moving stuff in. You must have food and water. Open up. Share some with us, or we'll break the door down. The threat was thrown right in our faces. Our worst fear had come true. What do we do? What do we do? Can't open it. Open the door. Damn it. You ask for it. The 4 of us huddled together, in our hands gripping weapons. Our palms were slick with sweat. The door was reinforced, but how long could it last under the constant battering? Fear flooded over me like ice water. Who the hell hit me? Where'd this kid come from, sticking his nose in? You guys. You okay? They ran off for now, but they might not have gone far. We were stunned. Whose voice was that? Who are you? My name is Chen Shuo. I live on the 3rd floor of the guys' dorm across the way. I saw you girls moving stuff before, and I figured it out. Just now, I heard something off, so I came to check. Chen Shuo. I quickly searched my memory. The name rang a faint bell. Seems like he's from the class next door. He's usually low-key, barely noticeable. How did you? Even though he seemed to have helped us, in this environment, we didn't dare trust anyone easily. I mean no harm. I've made some preparations too, but I can't last long alone. If you're willing, we can exchange some information, or watch each other's backs when needed. Of course, if you don't feel safe, I'll leave right now. His tone was sincere and restrained. He didn't push, and instead gave us a choice. That lowered our guard a bit. I peered through the small gap I'd left in the door. The hallway was flooded with murky water, about ankle deep. A tall, thin guy stood outside, soaked through. He had a scrape on his forehead, still oozing a little blood. In his hand, he held what looked like a table leg turned into a club. Not far behind him, on the water, some debris floated. The guys from before seemed to have disappeared. He looked pretty beat up, but in the dim light from his phone screen, his eyes were unusually calm and alert. After a short silence, I made a decision. To completely reject him would be to lose a potential ally who could also be dangerous. But opening the door was absolutely out of the question. Thanks, we're okay for now. We can watch each other's backs, but we need to set some ground rules. Understandable. Go ahead. First, we won't open the door. Second, communication can be done by knocking or through this small gap. Third, no unnecessary contact. Fourth, information can be shared. It needs to be exchanged fairly. Fair enough. I don't have much supplies either, mainly tools and some medicine. I noticed you reinforced the doors and windows. Good job, but maybe some improvements are needed to deal with the rising water and cold temperatures. I can share some methods I know. Tools and medicine, that's exactly what we're short of. And his proposal hit our pain point. In the following days, a peculiar neighborly relationship was established. Chen Shuo, as he said, provided many practical suggestions. For example, how to make simple floating devices from empty plastic bottles, just in case. How to more effectively use limited fuel for heating. And even shared bits of radio information he heard. His radio model is older, but seems to receive better on some frequencies. In return, we would occasionally, through the door gap, pass him some food we had more of, like some extra crackers. And he gave us some precious iodine and gauze. We used them for Wang Yangyang's accidentally cut finger. Also a small bag of precious ginger brown sugar, telling us to make tea to ward off the cold. Most of the time, he stayed in his temporary base on the 3rd floor, claiming it was safer, but occasionally came down to check on things, keeping distance yet genuinely providing help. His presence was like an invisible barrier, to some extent, deterring others who might covet our supplies. At least the ones who tried to break in that night never showed up again. But the situation kept worsening. The floodwater had reached half the height of the 1st floor windows. The water seepage under the dorm door was getting worse. We almost had to constantly bail water out. The cold was everywhere. The charcoal finally burned out. We could only rely on our bodies and constant movement to generate heat. We still had food, but eating cold crackers and canned food every day made both our stomachs and moods terrible. Even worse, Li Shui started coughing and running a low fever. Her temperature went up again. My medical knowledge is too limited. These common cold medicines are useless. Zhang Ting did her best to care for her with limited medicine, but we were all terrified, afraid the tragedy of the past life would repeat. On the 15th day, Li Shui's condition worsened. High fever wouldn't go down. She started talking nonsense. The little cold and fever medicine seemed useless. No, she needs antibiotics, needs better medicine. Go to Chen Shuo. Didn't he say he had some medicine? Ask if he has antibiotics. This is our last hope. I pounded on the door with the prearranged distress signal. What's wrong? Need help? Our roommate is really sick. High fever. Do you have any antibiotics or strong fever reducers? I only have a few amoxicillin. Not sure if they'll work. And some fever relief granules. But earlier, in the abandoned infirmary next to the water room on the 1st floor, I think I saw some discarded medicine boxes. I didn't have time to grab them before the water rose. I don't know if they're still there, or if they got soaked. The abandoned infirmary. We all know that place. It's full of expired and discarded stuff. Nobody ever goes there. Where is it exactly? It's the 2nd door to the right of the water room. The lock might be broken, but that area is lower. The water might have already. I'll go. I can't just watch Xiao Shui keep burning up like this. Let me go. I'm a better swimmer than you guys. And I know exactly where it is. You guys get ready to help. Before we could object, we heard the sound of waiting outside. He was gone. Time ticked by. Every second was torture. We listened to the water splashing outside, our hearts in our throats. Li Shui's painful moans were like needles piercing our hearts. It felt like an eternity. Finally, we heard the sound of waiting returning, and heavy breathing. Got it. There was a well-sealed medicine box. Hope no water got in. With that, a small box wrapped in layers of plastic bags was pushed through the crack in the door. Zhang Ting grabbed it. Trembling, she opened it. Thank goodness. The medicine inside was a bit damp, but most of the packaging was intact. I quickly found the right antibiotics and strong fever reducers. We hurriedly gave Li Shui the medicine and water, and wrapped her tightly in the blanket. After all that, we collapsed onto the floor exhausted. Only then did we remember Chen Shuo outside the door. Are you okay? Are you alright? I asked quickly. I'm fine, just the water was a bit cold. His voice sounded shaky. As long as it's useful. I'm going back first. Need to change into dry clothes. Only then did we realize that he had been diving in the freezing filthy water to get the medicine, how much energy he had spent, and what risks he had taken. A mix of emotions spread through us, gratitude and guilt. Thank you, I said with utmost seriousness, through the door crack. That word felt so inadequate at that moment, yet so sincere. Maybe it was because the medicine was right, maybe it was the will to survive. Li Shui's high fever, by the next morning, had finally gone down a bit. Although still weak, she was much more lucid. This good news almost made us cry. It also increased our trust in Chen Shuo, but fate's trials seemed endless. On the 18th day, the rain miraculously lessened, but from the intermittent radio reports, we learned that the upstream reservoir was critical. It could release or burst at any time. If that happened, the flood could instantly submerge the lower floors. We must evacuate to higher ground immediately. But Li Shui is still weak and can't walk on her own. We have too many supplies to carry everything out. We abandon most of the supplies and take only the essentials. Food, potions, some warm clothes, and tools. I make a swift decision. We have to move upstairs right now. We move quickly, using bed sheets and rope. We bundle the necessary supplies into several large packs. Then we look at the weak Li Shui. I'll carry her, Wang Yang says without hesitation. No, you still have to carry supplies, and the stairs are slippery. One person can't carry her steady. I shake my head. We need help. My gaze turns to the door. This time we don't hesitate. We actively knock the distress signal. Chen Shuo appears quickly. After we quickly explain the situation, he says immediately, I'll go with you. I know there's a multi-purpose room on the 4th floor. The door is sturdy, and it's high up. I'll carry her. You handle the supplies, and scout ahead. At this critical moment, his decisiveness and responsibility become our backbone. We open the door. The icy floodwater rushes into the dorm instantly. The water is waist deep. Chen Shuo bends down, carefully carrying Li Shui on his back. He secures her with the prepared rope. Wang Yang, Zhang Ting, and I shoulder the heavy supply packs. The group trudges through the water toward the staircase. The current is swift, and debris floats underwater. Walking is extremely difficult. The stairs are even more slippery. Each step must be cautious. Carrying someone, Chen Shuo struggles even more, but he remains steady and firm. Wang Yang and I flank him, one on each side. Zhang Ting scouts ahead. Just as we're about to reach the third-floor landing, an accident happens. Zhang Ting suddenly slips, cries out, and falls backward. She bumps into Wang Yang. The supply packs they were carrying fly out of their hands, slamming toward Chen Shuo and Li Shui on the stairs below. In the nick of time, Chen Shuo twists his body, using his shoulder to take the brunt of the falling pack. At the same time, he grips the handrail tightly, stabilizing himself and Li Shui on his back. But he lets out a grunt, and his face turns pale instantly. I'm sorry. Zhang Ting and Wang Yang are terrified, apologizing profusely. It's okay, keep moving. Chen Shuo grits his teeth, and continues climbing. Finally, we struggle to reach the multi-purpose room on the 4th floor. Just as Chen Shuo said, the door is sturdy, and it's high up, with no water inside for now. We collapse on the floor, exhausted, still shaken. Chen Shuo carefully sets Li Shui down, then leans against the wall, holding his shoulder, cold sweat beading on his forehead. Your shoulder. I noticed something's off about him. It's okay, maybe I bumped into something just now. A bit sprained. He said it casually, but looking at his pained expression, it was clearly more than just a bit. Zhang Ting guiltily took out the first aid kit and examined him. His shoulder was already swollen. It was likely a muscle strain, or worse. She quickly sprayed some anti-inflammatory spray on it. This was from the medical room's first aid kit. They did a simple immobilization. After a short rest, we realized the activity room was no place to stay. It was empty except for a few old tables and chairs, and some clutter piled in the corner. There were no survival resources at all. The supplies we brought were limited, especially food and medicine. We had to get back to our dorm as soon as possible to bring up more essentials. We had to go down again. I looked out the window at the still pouring rain and the murky floodwaters below, with a heavy heart. The things we brought wouldn't last more than a few days, especially since Li Shui needed nutrition. Chen Shuo, enduring the pain in his shoulder, tried to stand up. I'll go with you. You stay. Me, Wang Yang, and Zhang Ting said almost in unison. Your shoulder needs rest, and you need to help us watch over Li Shui and these supplies. I said firmly. This time, the three of us will go. You tell us where else we can find useful things. You tell us where else we can find useful things. You tell us where else we can find hiding spots you might know. Chen Shuo looked at our determined eyes, then looked at the weak Li Shui, and at the pile of precious supplies. In the end, he nodded. All right, you guys must be careful. The underwater situation is complex. A lot of debris floating. Watch your step. Don't trip or get cut. The second room on the right at the 3rd floor stairway. It used to be the old equipment room. It might be locked, but the door isn't very sturdy. There might be some old sports mats inside that can keep you warm. Maybe even some bottled water that hasn't been cleared away. Or energy drinks left over from previous sports meets. He paused and added, the most important thing is to go quickly and come back quickly. Don't be greedy. The water level is still rising. It doesn't feel right. We three retied the rope, picked up empty backpacks and several large waterproof bags, stepped back into the icy bone-chilling water. The way back to the dorm was harder than coming up. The water level had clearly risen again. It was already up to our chests. The current was also swifter. We had to support each other, moving with difficulty. Books were floating underwater, basins and plastic bags, even small pieces of furniture. Every move was full of danger. Finally made it back to 103. Looking at the half-submerged fortress, a sense of desolation in our hearts, we quickly took action. Our goal was clear. Priority on high-energy food, like chocolate, beef jerky, etc., and more medicine. All the remaining fuel, solid alcohol, charcoal, water, and all dry warm clothing and thick blankets. The water had already risen above the lower bunk. Some of the supplies we had stored on the table had survived the disaster, but many things below were ruined. We could only grope, quickly stuffing whatever was still usable into the backpacks. Look, from under Wang Yang's bed, in a well-sealed plastic storage bin, she pulled out several large bags of unopened nuts and dried fruit, and a small vacuum-packed bag of rice. Yang, when did you hide these? Wang Yang was stunned for a moment, then remembered. Oh, my mom brought these when she visited last time. I didn't have time to eat them, just shoved them under the bed. Awesome. This unexpected find perked us up. These high-calorie, easy-to-store foods are precious. We packed up as much of the scavenged supplies as possible, backpacks and bags bulging. Just as we were about to leave, I spotted a small sealed box floating on the water. Inside was what Li Shui had been hoarding like treasure, various seasonings, salt, sugar, pepper, and such. I hesitated for a second, but fished it out and stuffed it in my pocket. In extreme conditions, a little flavor might boost morale a lot. On the way back to the 4th floor, we deliberately detoured to the old equipment room Chen Shuo mentioned. The lock was indeed rusty. Wang Yang smashed it a few times with the hammer we brought, and it opened. Dust everywhere inside, stacked with old equipment. To our delight, we found several rolls of old but still decent gymnastics mats. More importantly, in a box in the corner, we found half a case of dusty, but still sealed, bottled water, and a few sports drinks. It was a godsend. We grabbed as much water and drinks as we could carry, and dragged 2 rolls of mats. The trip back was even tougher. Extremely heavy load. The water current made it almost impossible to move. Every step was a struggle, gasping for air. The cold, filthy water sucked away the last of our body heat. When we finally, in a sorry state, crawled back into the 4th floor activity room, we almost collapsed on the floor. Chen Shuo and Li Shui rushed over to help. Seeing the supplies we brought back, especially the water and drinks, a spark of joy lit up Chen Shuo's eyes. Great, this water is crucial. He helped unload the supplies. This successful haul gave everyone a huge morale boost. We took stock of what we had, though we lost some stuff from the dorm. Combined with this new find, if we ration carefully, it should last us a while longer. We spread the gymnastics mats on the floor to insulate from the cold ground. Everyone huddled together, sharing cold food and water, listening to the seemingly endless rain outside. Temporary safety brought a moment of peace, but also magnified the anxiety and uncertainty inside. In the silence, a heavy atmosphere began to spread. Li Shui's fever had gone down, but she was still weak, coughing every now and then. Looking at the little medicine left, her eyes were full of worry. Zhang Ting silently looked at her own arm, which she had scraped earlier while moving things. The wound had turned red after being soaked in the dirty water. Wang Yang kept checking the few remaining food packages, calculating how many more days they could last. His brows were tightly furrowed. Chen Shu leaned against the wall, trying not to move his injured shoulder, but the faint sounds of him whimpering in pain could still be heard. I looked at them, knowing full well that physical difficulties could be overcome, but if the mental pressure wasn't relieved, it might break us in an instant. Sure enough, the conflict erupted the next afternoon. It started over the distribution of drinking water. We had agreed earlier that each person could have 1 bottle of water per day. Since Li Shui was sick and needed to take medicine, everyone silently allowed her to have a little more. But when Wang Yang saw her reaching for the water bottle a second time, he suddenly spoke up, his voice laced with barely contained irritation. Go easy on the water. Do you need that much water to take your meds? Just a sip is enough. Who knows how much longer this rain will last? Li Shui's hand froze in midair, her face instantly turning red, and her eyes welling up. She said, agreed, I'm just a little thirsty, and the medicine tastes awful. Who isn't thirsty? Who isn't miserable? Wang Yang's voice rose an octave. The fear of the past few days, the exhaustion and stress, all found an outlet. This is all the water we have. If you take 1 more sip, someone else gets 1 less. We know you're sick, but that doesn't mean you can just yang, say less. Xiao Shui needs water for her meds. She needs. We all know she needs it. But what about us? Wang Yang stood up abruptly, his emotions boiling over. We risked our lives carrying things down there, almost got washed away, hurt our shoulders, and now we have to conserve everything. And her? She just lies around. Wang Yang, I shouted sharply, stopping her before she could say something more hurtful. Chen Shu watched silently from the side, not saying a word, but his eyes were filled with mixed emotions. Li Shui's tears started flowing, and she began to sob quietly. I'm sorry. I've been holding everyone back. If I hadn't gotten sick, you wouldn't have had to risk going down there. I'm sorry. Zhang Ting put her arm around Li Shui, and said angrily to Wang Yang, how can you say that? We're a team. If Chen Shu hadn't risked getting that medicine last time, Xiao Shui might not have made it this far. What's the point of saying this now, team? Who knows how long this team will even last? Wang Yang shouted recklessly, didn't we all die 1 by 1 last time? What about this time? Who knows who's next? These words hit like a bomb, instantly plunging the room into dead silence. Everyone remembered that unbearable, first death experience. Fear, like freezing air, choked the breath out of everyone. Li Shui's crying stopped. Only silent trembling remained. Zhang Ting's face turned pale. Chen Shuo also looked at Wang Yang in shock, as if he hadn't expected her to say that. But more than anything, confusion. Last time? What last time? But right now, I felt both rage and a chill rise in my heart. Division and infighting in the apocalypse are deadlier than any flood. Wang Yang. My voice was ice cold. Take that back. Wang Yang calmed down, seemingly realizing she had misspoken, but she stubbornly turned her head away, her chest heaving violently, refusing to apologize. The oppressive silence continued. A rift seemed to have formed. I took a deep breath, walked to the middle of the room, and let my gaze sweep over everyone, including Chen Shuo. We all remember how we died last time. My voice wasn't loud, but it reached every ear clearly. Li Shui had a high fever with no treatment. Zhang Ting was swept away trying to find food. Wang Yang got tetanus, and I drowned in the end. Each time someone died, how did the survivors feel? Despair. Regret. Wishing they could die in their place. My voice choked up a little, but I forced myself to continue. We came back to life. Is it just to repeat the same tragedy? To blame each other and die one by one again? No. We're here to survive together, so we never have to go through that despair of losing a companion again. I walked over to Wang Yang, looking into her reddened eyes. You're scared. We all know it. I'm scared too. Scared to death. But our enemy out there is the flood. It's the cold and the hunger, not the sister who slept next to you for 4 years. Then I turned to Li Shui. Getting sick isn't your fault. Don't blame yourself. We need you. We need everyone to be okay. Finally, I looked at Zhang Ting and Chen Shuo. Support each other. That's the only way we'll make it through. Suspicion and complaints. They'll just get us killed faster. After I spoke, the rec room fell silent except for the rain and everyone's heavy breathing. Chen Shuo listened. He seemed to understand what we meant by last time. His eyes showed shock, terror, but under the circumstances, he could only force himself to accept the fact that we've been reborn. Wang Yang's shoulders slumped. She slowly crouched down, burying her face in her knees. A muffled voice came out. I'm sorry. I was just so scared. I was afraid that after all we've done, we'd still end up. Li Shui struggled to crawl over. She reached out and gently placed her hand on Wang Yang's back. I'm the one who should be sorry. Yang, thank you for going down to save me. Zhang Ting also came over and hugged them both. I looked at them, my nose stinging. I walked over too. 4 girls embracing, tears mixed with rain and sweat. But this time, it wasn't the weeping of despair. It was a release, a sense of relief, and a renewed determination. Chen Shuo watched silently from the side. His eyes softened. He breathed a slight sigh of relief. The brief conflict was resolved. After this conflict, our relationship actually became closer. We remade a more detailed supply distribution plan. We even formally included Chen Shuo in the distribution system. After all, he is now an indispensable member of our group. We shared food and water. We treated each other's minor wounds. We took turns keeping watch and caring for the sick. Chen Shuo's shoulder gradually improved under Zhang Ting's care. He also played a greater role. Using his knowledge and calm judgment, he helped us avoid risks. Days passed. The rain still showed no signs of stopping. The news from the radio became more and more desperate. The upstream reservoir failed in the end. The flood release worsened the downstream disaster. The city was almost completely flooded. The rescue forces could barely save themselves. They urged survivors to save themselves. The water had risen to the 3rd floor. It was approaching the 4th floor. Water began seeping through the cracks of the activity room door. We had to make tougher decisions. Continue moving upward. The goal was the rooftop of the dormitory building. That was the highest point of the entire building. This was undoubtedly an even more dangerous trek. The stairwell might be completely submerged, or even structurally damaged. We needed to push against the current in the dark, climb at least 5 stories. We started preparing. We streamlined the remaining supplies again, only taking the essentials. All the food, water, medicine, lighters, flashlights, batteries, rope, knife, and a few warm clothes. We used found rope and bed sheets to tie everyone together, to prevent anyone from being swept away. Chen Shuo used found wood and old table legs to make simple flotation aids for grabbing. On the morning of the 21st day, the water had already covered the lower half of the activity room door. We knew we couldn't wait any longer. Ready? Yeah. We took a deep breath, pushed open the activity room door, and stepped into the cold water world again. The stairwell leading to the rooftop was like a dark, dangerous tunnel. Water had almost filled the entire space. We had to hold our breath and dive to get through each landing. The light was extremely dim. We could only rely on flashlights to illuminate a small area ahead. Chen Shuo led the way, using a stick to probe the path and clearing debris that might block the way. I brought up the rear to make sure no one was left behind. Wang Yang and Zhang Ting flanked Li Shui. Every step was extremely difficult. More debris floated underwater, vision blurred. The cold and lack of oxygen constantly tested our limits. Several times, we were almost hit by suddenly appearing floating objects, or got our ankles tangled by ropes underwater. I can't make it. Hang in there, Shui, we're almost there. We struggled. Finally, when we were almost exhausted, we saw the last flight of stairs leading to the rooftop, and that familiar iron door, usually locked. Luckily, maybe because of disrepair, or maybe because of the water pressure, that iron door was actually ajar. Everyone, be careful. I'll open it. Chen Shuo pushed hard. The iron door screeched and swung open. Supporting each other, we staggered out of the water. Finally, we set foot on the rooftop. Cold rain immediately poured down on us. The strong wind nearly knocked us over. But at that moment, breathing the moist yet free air, feeling the open space, we all felt a sense of exhaustion from surviving. We weren't alone on the rooftop. A few other figures scattered in different corners, equally disheveled. When they saw us, they only gave a numb glance. We found a relatively sheltered corner, huddled together, with the last of our strength, propped up a tarp we brought, barely keeping the rain off. Extreme exhaustion quickly made us fall asleep. I don't know how long passed, but I was awakened by violent shaking. It wasn't the wind, the whole building was shaking. A loud rumbling came from afar. What's wrong? Chen Shuo's face suddenly changed. He looked into the distance and shouted, "It's a dam burst. The real flood peak is coming." In the distance, a muddy roof several meters high, like a moving wall, devouring everything in its path, was rushing toward our area. Despair instantly gripped everyone's heart. The rooftop was no longer safe either. "Grab onto something fixed. Grab anything you can," Chen Shuo shouted at the top of his lungs, and grabbed the railing at the edge of the rooftop, while his other hand held onto Li Xuan next to him. We immediately understood. We desperately rushed to the abandoned concrete base for the solar water heater in the middle of the rooftop, the strongest spot on the rooftop. Wang Yang, Zhang Ting, and I also held onto the base tightly. We grabbed each other's arms and tied ourselves and the base together with rope. The giant wave crashed down like a monstrous beast. It slammed into the teaching building. The whole building shook violently, as if it would fall apart any second. Water from the massive impact flooded the rooftop instantly. We were completely engulfed in the cold, murky water. A tremendous force tried to tear us apart. I held my breath tightly, feeling like my organs were about to be crushed. My ears were filled with a horrible roar. My body was being yanked wildly by the current. The only thing I felt was my companions gripping just as desperately, and the rope cutting into my waist with searing pain, reminding me that I was still fighting. I don't know how long it took, but finally, the terrifying force passed. The water slowly receded, and we surfaced again. Everyone was coughing wildly, spitting out the dirty water they'd inhaled. "Is everyone here? Are you all okay?" I shouted anxiously, my voice hoarse. "I'm here." Wang Yang grabbed my arm tightly. "I'm here too." Zhang Ting's voice was choked with tears. "What about Li Xue? What about Chen Shuo?" Wang Yang cried out. My heart tightened. I whipped my head around. Chen Shuo was half lying on the concrete base, his face deathly pale. His right hand was still gripping the railing, but his left hand was empty. "Li Xue," I shouted in panic. "Over here." A faint voice came from nearby. We looked over. Li Xue was actually on the other side of the base. One of her hands was caught by the half rope that Chen Shuo had stuffed into her hand earlier, tied to the base. Her other hand was gripping a crack on the edge of the base. It was Chen Shuo, at the last moment, who somehow secured her. We hurriedly pulled Li Xue over. She was scared out of her wits, but seemed okay. The survivors on the rooftop cried and wailed in relief. The despair was thicker than ever. I looked at my bruised and broken companions, then looked into the distance. The storm seemed to be letting up. The wind wasn't as fierce. A faint grayish light even shone through the clouds. "Look," I said hoarsely, pointing to the horizon. They followed my gaze. The rain really was easing up, though it was still overcast. That suffocating thick cloud layer seemed to be slowly dispersing. The wind had softened a bit. A small, but real change was happening. "The rain is stopping," Zhang Ting murmured, as if she couldn't believe it. A glimmer of light returned to Wang Yang's eyes. "It seems real." Half-conscious Chen Shuo also opened his eyes slightly, looking at that glimmer. Hope was like that light piercing the clouds. Though faint, it truly existed. The storm paused, and the roar of the flood seemed to fade away. Amidst the ruins, survivors hugged and cried, or looked around blankly. As survivors ourselves, we huddled together, waiting for the clouds to part, waiting for dawn to come. This time, what we really held tight wasn't supplies, or a chance to survive, but each other's hands, and that bond forged through life and death, that had never been extinguished.